Super excited to bring this interview to you guys today on the platform. Today, we're talking to a women's lacrosse coach. Her name's Jordan Trejo. Super exciting because she's been through some ups and downs in the sport. I love talking to athletes like her about, the transition from high school to college. And then even when the playing days were over, the transition and the toll it takes on you mentally when you're done playing. And so we'll learn about her story. It's very unique and, what the transition was like. Sometimes you end your season on a win, sometimes you don't. She's experienced both sides of that. And so she's going to share, the ups and downs, the things that she's learned. She's going to share more about Boise State's lacrosse program for women. And, hopefully this will bring some more light to it. I want to encourage you guys to check out the description of this podcast wherever you might be listening, whether it's YouTube or if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any audio platform. We're going to put the Instagram page for the women's lacrosse program here in the description. I'd encourage you guys to go check it out. Make sure to show them some support, hit them with a follow. But above all, most importantly, I should say, is during their season, let's make sure we go, if you're in the Boise area, let's make sure to go and support them and catch a game or two or more, right? So I hope you guys enjoy this one. Super cool interview with a women's lacrosse coach who also played collegiately at BYU. So I'm excited to bring it to you. This is the Gametime Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time!
This is the Gametime Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Gametime Guru podcast. My name is Shane Larson, host of the show. Excited to be here with you guys. For those who've been following me, if you look at my neck this week, at the time of this recording, this is actually going away. Got shot in the neck by a firework on the 4th of July. If you were following me on social media, anybody who was following me, you got to see the progression of that. That was fun throughout the last week. My other 2 burn marks were gone. But just stay safe out there if you guys are fireworks people. Next 4th of July, just make sure you keep your eyes open because you never know. A neighbor across the street might shoot a mortar right at you and hits you in the neck. So always fun that way. As you guys heard in the introduction, special episode for us today. This is a connection that I made through my business partner, Garrett Crone, who he and I are working with the Helix Mental Performance Camp, which we encourage you guys, if you live in the Treasure Valley of Idaho, to sign up for. It's going to be helping athletes take their mental game to the next level. We know that there's tons of athletes out there who are bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. Everybody's working on their speed and agility and strength and everything. But not a lot of people really focus on the mental side of the game. And you hear that from elite athletes talking about the mental side of the game. We've talked about it multiple times in the show. So that's what we're doing. We're putting together the Helix Mental Performance Camp for the 2nd year. And we are blessed to have our guest be one of our speakers there. And we're hoping that we can get some signups for that performance camp so you guys can show up. But this is a connection through Garrett. So I want to shout out Garrett, but I'm excited to have her on the show. Now her name is Jordan Trejo. Jordan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. So currently you're at Boise State coaching the women's lacrosse team. Am I correct?
Yes. Yep.
And how long have you been doing that for?
So this fall will start my 5th season with the team and my 1st season as the head coach.
So first season, you're coming up on the 1st season as head coach. That is such a good segue here because I want to ask you, like, what do you feel like as of right now? We're going to get a little bit more into the weeds here in a second, but what are you most excited for and what are you most, I guess, anxious about becoming a head coach for the first time?
Yeah. It's been like a whirlwind of emotions pretty much since I've known, but I'm really excited. I think we have last year we graduated 9 girls from either seniors leaving or juniors that'll graduate this December. And so we lost a big class, but I know that we have a lot of potential going into this next year. And I have a leadership team set up already that I know is really excited. I just met with 2 of them yesterday, actually, and we hashed out a bunch of plans and goals and things for the season already. And so knowing that there's girls that are that committed and that excited makes me really excited for this season to see what we can accomplish. In terms of like nerves and anxiety, there's like just a little bit that I'm worried about that like there's nobody else to like not back me up, but to like pass the decision making off to. It comes down to me, which is a first in this scenario. I've been in leadership roles as a player before, but to be in like the top leadership position as a coach is kind of a different different setup for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's funny. I had a guy named Pete Steinberg join my show. He coaches women's rugby in the Olympics and stuff. And he wrote a book called Leadership Shock. And I was promoting his book here on the show just about 2 months ago. And he talks about it's a similar concept, going from one leadership role to another, but how sometimes it's hard, even within the same organization. It's hard. Like, let's just talk about a corporation for a second, like an organization for work. You'll see a lot of people that go from, like, let's just say they're the director of a certain department and they go to a VP role of that certain department. It's actually harder for them to transition to that role within the same company than it would be if they were to go to that in a different company, because they get so comfortable with their role. They think it's going to be kind of the same flow and the same everything, but it's not, right? And then they have to get used to the new flow and the ownership that's, put on their shoulders and so forth. As far as being a leader, you have to take it all. Like, the decision-making is ultimately falls on you. So you have to make those decisions. So it's, that kind of checks out, because I would imagine as a head coach, that's probably going to be one of the things that you got to, you have to deal with. But it's also probably kind of fun. You get to kind of be part of the strategic piece there. In the last 5 years, Jordan, what have you learned the most as a coach over there in the last 5 years? We'll get to your playing days in a little bit, but I just want to know from a coaching perspective, what have you learned so far?
Man, it's a great question. We honestly, so we've seen a lot of success. We started, my friend Kristen that I coached with, we came in and the seniors that were on the team had not had a repeat coach before us. So they had 4 different coaches, which was crazy. I've never been a part of a program that has had that much turnover with the coaching staff.
Wow,
yeah. So we came in and, kind of were trying to feel things out. But as we progressed year after year, I really think that commitment and just like showing up and being committed and being able to get the girls to buy in and commit more has helped our team to progress and like reach higher success levels than anybody has in program history. So I'm hoping we can continue that. But there's like so many pieces that move and change based on your personnel and based on other teams that are out of your control. But if people can just show up and commit, I feel like that's just a piece that it can be the biggest piece.
So from the women's lacrosse game, like I've spoken with tons of different athletes, coaches, sports figures through the last 7.5 years. I'm just curious how the women's lacrosse sport works at BSU from a recruiting standpoint. How do you find girls that are committed to like actually, sticking it through and buying in like that? Do you find it to be pretty difficult at times, or do you have quite a wide variety of girls that are, ready to come and play over at Boise State?
Yeah, it's definitely gotten easier as we've built a reputation and as we've had like girls come into leadership that are more and more committed. Like I said, they kind of set the tone, which helps us start and build that commitment. Because we're a spring sport, we have all fall to kind of build that commitment and those expectations. But because we are a club sport and we're a student run club, we honestly, they like go out and they do tabling at the quad at like a rec event, and we take anybody that can come in the fall, and then we kind of go from there. I can't recruit. I can't like go out and offer anything. So that's the best.
Yes. That's where I was going to get into. So it is a tad different for club sports. I actually boxed at Boise State when it was a club sport back then. There was a boxing, kickboxing club. We did fight other schools. I think people they think of it as, oh, it's just a club. You don't actually compete against other schools. No, that year, there was 2 years where it existed and we got to compete against other schools. But it was student ran. There were certain things you had to do you had to fund it. So you had to find ways to get it done. Luckily for us, boxing's a low budget sport anyway, especially the amateurs. But like, we fought at the kinesiology building. Like, that was where we hosted the Bronco belt title, like 2006. So it's kind of interesting, though. It's hard because the coach brought us all in for a meeting and said, hey, are you guys interested? It was in the Arbiter. And we went over there and we were like, oh, we all saw it in the Arbiter. And we were like, cool. I'd already been boxing for 3 years. Decided, let's go check this out. I joined the club. And it's funny because all these, you kind of just take what you got and you have to like mold them. And you had a lot of guys, a couple girls, but a lot of guys that were like, oh yeah, dude, I played football in high school. I'll come and box. I think I can do that. And then they're not committed once they get punched in the face a couple times in their sparring practices. And then all of a sudden they're not there, but there's nothing you can really do about it because it's a club sport. So it's really hard. So that's why I was like, I want people to understand the ups and the downs of club sports, club athletics. It's hard in that regard. But if you have the right leadership that can kind of get these athletes to buy in and really stick to it, that's awesome. So do you feel like there's good support at Boise State from an administrative standpoint for the lacrosse program?
Yeah, we have a guy I actually met with this summer just to like set a foundation going into head coaching, and talked a lot about ways that I'd like to continue to help the program. You know, at the club level, you can always want more, right? Like I would love to access weight room. I would love to access having a speed and agility coach or something of that nature. But we have found, especially financially, and finding, a couple sponsorships as we've had tournaments come up and money's a little bit tight. They've been awesome about supporting us and making sure we have field space and that we have athletic trainers at the tournaments and the games that we host. And I'm really grateful for what they do provide. And honestly, just being able to practice inside, we practice at cabin, is huge. It makes such a big difference for us to be able to practice year round. And when I played at BYU, we were a club team, but we were not sanctioned and technically not affiliated with the school at all. And I remember we would like shovel parking lots or tennis courts to be able to have places to practice. And so there's like nothing I take for granted at this point. So
wow.
Trying to, always improve and grow as much as I can, but grateful every step of the way.
Yo, BYU did y'all dirty over there, man. What's going on? No, I'm just kidding.
It's gotten a lot better. I did coach for 1 year at BYU, and I was like shocked at the resources they had. And I was like, oh, this would have been amazing to have.
Wouldn't that be nice, huh? Yeah. No, that's funny. Yeah, I guess it's a good perspective to have, right? Like you're grateful for what you have. I'm wondering, do you guys ever tap into like the blue collar club, like Joel York and all those guys that run the blue collar club, or, Boise Sports Talk? My buddy Ty Spangenberg that runs Boise Sports Talk's Instagram page. Have you ever chatted with them by chance?
I had one player chat with Boise Sports Talk. I'm pretty sure it was them a couple years ago. But we have not since then. And honestly, any connections you could hook me up with, I'd be thrilled to make those connections and get their support, but also learn more about getting involved in the community. That's one of our goals in the next couple of years, is to continue to reach out and get hopefully more community buy-in and give back as a team.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I'll see if we can't get you in contact with Ty. Those who are listening to me that are from the Idaho area probably know who Ty is from Boise Sports Talk. He and I actually ran a business together, but I'm still really close with him from the media standpoint, and he's a stud. One of his things that he does is, the reason I even bring that up is because, Boise Sports Talk has done a great job at highlighting. So I call him Boise Sports Talk. It's Ty Spangenberg who runs Boise Sports Talk. It's a one-man show as far as his page, but he highlights sports that are like the non-traditional, it's not always just Boise State football, Boise State basketball. Sure, he gets that. He gets all the high school coverage as well, but Boise State hockey, volleyball, beach volleyball, all those like the smaller sports, right, that need the coverage. So if we can connect you, maybe he can, get some coverage for you guys this next year so that you guys can get some, get the name out there. He's really good about that. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of media outlets aren't really covering it to that degree. So I wonder if he can't get a little bit of exposure that way. That would be really, really cool. Yeah. So Jordan, as you were talking, you played in college as well. You played lacrosse. Talk to me about before college even came about. Did you play lacrosse your whole life? Like, was this a sport that you were really involved in, or were you one of the girls that came in and like that was an opportunity to play a club sport, so you thought you'd take it? Like, what was your experience with the sport of lacrosse prior to BYU?
I joke that I was born into like a cult lacrosse family. So my dad played at BYU in grad school and then continued to play pickup as long as he could. There's like pictures of me in a car seat at the sidelines of his games. So he helped start high school lacrosse in Utah while we lived there. And then when I was 12, we moved back east to Virginia. So I claim Virginia as like my hometown, and I grew up just outside of the University of Virginia, which is like this lacrosse hotspot. Played all through high school, was an All-American, made the state national team, was competitive, worked really hard on getting recruited, and then things just kind of fell through and didn't quite find the right match, and then decided to go to BYU and then played on their club team. That's
cool. So coming into a lacrosse family, you like, it was kind of ingrained in you, and plus being back east. For those who are, let's give a little history lesson though. Like, I mean, lacrosse. When I was in high school, I graduated in 2006 at Meridian here in the Treasure Valley. But I remember then we had a lacrosse team, but it was not popular at all. Like it was not even close to what it is now, just 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. But we always knew that back east is kind of where lacrosse was at. Like that's where the hot spot was. And it was making its way out here, and it was becoming more popular. It's grown substantially since then. Yes. But I just remember always hearing about back east, back east, back east. Like this is huge back east, And just like we would hear about soccer overseas is crazy. I didn't actually believe that until I went to Brazil for my mission, and I realized, oh yeah, soccer is massive over here. This is a whole different world. So like I guess that's probably similar to lacrosse. But did you have a little bit of a culture shock, like going from Virginia and the way lacrosse was there, then coming back out to the West where it's not as popular, I'm assuming, at the time that you were out there?
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of that. I had family coaching high school level in Utah, and so I like had kept tabs a little bit on what was happening. Honestly, I think for me, the hardest part of playing back east and then coming and playing back on the West Coast was not coast, but out west was the reffing. I played at like a fairly physical level in high school, and I got some rough nicknames from some of the refs and some of the people around, which most people that know me outside of lacrosse can never believe it, but I played really aggressive. And so I would get carded every once in a while in high school. I just played hard and physical. And then we came out west and playing. I honestly felt like the refs were so much more strict and would not let me play at that same physical level that I was used to and hoping to play it. You move from high school to college and you expect it to be more physical and more intense. And instead it almost was like a half step down almost, and took a lot more discipline that didn't always show through, unfortunately.
Oh, wow. It's funny you say that, and this is maybe just luck of the draw. I was, Googling your name the other day just to kind of pull up some statistics.
Yeah.
And it had you in the penalty section down at the bottom. It was a stat sheet from, I don't know if it was it Westminster?
Oh, probably. Yep.
I don't know. It was a game you guys played against. It's one of those schools like that. And it showed I think you had you scored twice, but then it showed you in the penalty mark with like 3 or 4 other athletes. And I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. So that probably checks out. I don't know the context behind that particular game, but it's just funny that you said that.
Yeah. Yeah. I have like teammates. I had like underclassmen joke, and they'd get me a gift before a tournament, and it was packed with yellow. And they said, here's all your yellow. Don't get any more yellow cards this weekend. And I would try.
Hey, much respect. Listen, I don't judge. I mean, in high school, I led my team in technical fouls my junior year, and then I tied for the most my senior year. But most of those were not for physicality. It was more so for chirping at the referees. Oh. But that was just kind of how that was back then. But I don't judge. I judge not. Okay, right. I think that's awesome. So in Virginia, I guess when you're playing high level lacrosse, what would you say for like you as an athlete was like the way that what was a day in the life of Jordan Trejo, who was, playing at a high level, potentially looking to play at the next level? What was a day in the life for you as an athlete in regards to your training and the games and so forth? Yeah, so I lucked out and had something unique about me in high school is I had this awesome track coach who really believed in me and kind of took me under his wing and really developed me as an athlete. So we would work together in the summers to do weight training, which most people back when I was in high school, it was like not a huge thing for girls to go do that, especially in the off season. And so we would do that. And then because he coached both indoor and outdoor track, he let me compete in the outdoor track season, even though it was also the same season as lacrosse. So I was able to letter in both track and lacrosse 3 out of the 4 seasons that I was in high school. And that meant that often, so I would get up in the morning. I had early morning seminary, and so I'd be gone early in the morning and then would go to school. And then I would hustle out of school and I would race to the track, and I would start a track workout often while the rest of my teammates for lacrosse were heading up to the field. And I would do a full track workout, and then I would bust my butt up to the field, up to the upper field to go finish out there. So I would usually miss conditioning with lacrosse, and then I would go and I would do a full lacrosse practice. And then depending on whether it was like how many games we had that week, or whether or not there was a midweek track meet or a weekend track meet and invitational would kind of change that. But that was usually what kept me pretty busy. Goodness. Okay. So you had cardio for days, I'm assuming. Yes. Because you were using your wheels out there. Yes. What did you compete in track? Like what were your events? I ran middle distance. So usually anywhere from the 4 to the 800, usually relays. And then my coach put me in triple jump and long jump. I didn't ever place very well in them. I think it was more so he could get me doing agility work and strengthening stuff instead of just going for a maintenance run. But dude, the 400 and the 800, those are difficult, man. Yes. Like that's like that mid range where you're like, you got to pace yourself, but you also got to sprint. Like it's hard, dude. That's crazy. Those are really hard.
They were tough ones. They tell you how to run them, and they're like, yeah, you run it like the distance lower than, so you run an 800 like a 400, and then you ask, how do you run a 400? They're like, you run it like a 200. And I'm like, how do you do that? They're like, you sprint the whole time. I'm like, I can't do that for half a mile, but what do you do?
That's tough. That's cool though that you did all that. What would you say was the biggest thing that crossed over as an athlete in track that crossed over to the lacrosse field?
I played midfield for lacrosse, so I took center. I played center and took the draw, and just that endurance and that ability to like kind of zone out and not zone in, maybe is a better way to put it, and just really focus and not focus on like what part of my body was hurting or anything like that, just to be able to get up and down the field and to read kind of where other people were at and when I could kick and get past them versus when I needed to just like hang on, both on the lacrosse field and running around the track. I think was a big crossover between the two of them.
That is a great point. It reminds me of a quote from Gino Auriemma, who's a women's basketball coach at UConn, and I remember him saying it was like they blew up all over the media, but he was talking to the players, and he told them, the difference between the great players and the good ones. The great players don't get tired, and there's like that. We've talked about that. I'm a basketball coach myself. I coach club basketball at the high school level, so like the seniors in high school and stuff. So usually 16, 17 U squad, I'm coaching them, and I've talked to them about that exact. I've quoted them, and what you just said right there is such an important piece, and I want to like make sure we dial that in with other athletes. Just remember like the importance of having endurance and being in shape. It's so much like people don't understand what you just said, like you can zone in and just focus on the actual game rather than like, do I need to conserve energy? What part of my body's hurting? Like all this stuff. No, just zone in because you've got the lungs and you got the wheels because you've been putting in the work. If you can just focus on that, you've already got an advantage on like 90% of the field. Like that's just what happens. A lot of people are just so tired. They're always pacing themselves. And while they're pacing themselves, you're attacking. And it just allows you to have more. You just get to call the shots. You get to play how you play. And I think that's cool that you just said that because I've told my players that. I was, quoting Gino Auriemma, and I've said the same thing. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll back you on that any day.
Dude, that's so cool. Hey, so I do have a question. So the decision to go to BYU, was that more of an academic decision? Knowing that like they had a club lacrosse team, did you consider potentially going to other schools on the East Coast, or was it a dream of yours to go to BYU and be there? Like, I'm just curious from the lacrosse standpoint, was it like something that you had, you had to make a decision between schools, or was that just something you knew you were always going to go to BYU?
I did not want to go to BYU at first. I tried my hardest. I think the summer between my junior and senior year, lots of the lacrosse coaches, you go and you talk to them and you say, hey, I'd love to play for you. I'd love to attend your school. And they say, come to our camp, attend our camp. And that adds up. There's a lot of camps. And so you kind of have to narrow down your list and say, like, who do I want to prioritize? Where do I have a good shot of getting in? And that summer between my junior and senior year, I think I spent a grand total of like 8 days at home. I was like going from one camp to the next. I'd come home and I'd wash all my clothes and then I'd be gone the next morning. I was very close to playing at Notre Dame. They took 4 out of my graduating class and I was number 6 on their list. And then I looked very closely at William and Mary and would have loved to play at UVA. They didn't recruit very much from Charlottesville, unfortunately. And then I also looked at, there was somewhere else that had I think it might've been William and Mary that had a coaching staff switch. And so I had these conversations and then all of a sudden they just ghosted me, which it happens. It's fine. But, so then when none of those quite panned out in the recruiting timeline, all of a sudden I was like, okay, I could walk on somewhere and I could run track, or I could go and get into a school and then I could, try to walk onto the lacrosse team. And then I looked at places that could happen. And there were so many schools and it just was a bunch of near misses, to be totally honest. So I had Virginia Tech, I got waitlisted, and William and Mary, I got waitlisted, and then UVA, I got rejected, which was like a big shock and a huge bummer. And then I was looking at what other options I had, and I was like, you know what? If I can't go to any of these schools that I would have loved to play at, I'd rather be close to family. So I had grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles and figured that was the best spot for me to start out. And then I went, and when I started playing, I made my best friends and then didn't ever think about leaving after that. So.
Oh man. And it's crazy the journey everyone goes on. Right. And,
right.
At the time, I'm sure that was pretty frustrating, but it's it's cool to see. I believe it's divine intervention. Like there's always a plan, and sometimes you can't see it. It might take a while to figure out like what the message was behind it, you know. But I would ask this then, if you wouldn't mind, like some advice maybe to give to athletes that are struggling in the recruiting process, and they might not fully understand. They might be down because all the options it seems like they're wanting are not happening. What advice would you give those athletes, having been through that yourself?
I think I reached a point where I started to feel almost like desperate inside, and like this aching of like, if I don't make it D1 and if I don't go play for this school, like, what does that mean about my abilities? And it kind of turned me in on myself, which there was a rough couple weeks where I was like, I have worked for this for so long. I've done all the things. I've jumped through the hoops. I've done the things that I thought I was supposed to do, and it is not panning out. And so I had to take a step back and just really get clear on like, what is most important to me? Like, I could go to these schools that have offered or, you know, expressed interest, but it's not a good fit school wise for me. And that would be compromising myself and, you know, what's best for me long term. And so I would encourage people to just get clear on like really what is most important. There's lots of people that have very unique stories. Not everybody gets recruited the traditional way, even if that's what it looks like. And not everybody plays at the level that they maybe expect to or dream of, but that doesn't mean that their experience is any less or worse or any of those things. It might, like you said, it might be divine intervention to lead them exactly where they're supposed to be. I can't say that I necessarily would have gotten into coaching had I not ended up with playing with teammates who then encouraged me to coach with them. And now it's, you know, something I can't imagine giving up.
That is so cool. And I appreciate that insight. And I hope those who are listening to this rewind that and take note. I always encourage people to take notes on the podcast. If you guys are listening to it on your mobile device or whatever, have your notepad out and take notes, because we see it all the time. The reality is, you know, Jordan, with even in basketball, but it's in all sports. Like, I have a lot of athletes that, you know, it's a sad moment, but they get, you know, get down on themselves, and then they get wrapped up in the rejection, and then they start to make that a personal thing where that just shuts them down as a human being. And then they end up like it affects other parts of their life too. It's hard for them to have that perspective. So that's why I appreciate you like sharing that, so they can understand that like you got to find there's something there, and it'll be okay. Like, don't get so wrapped up in it. Easier said than done, I'm sure, but it's cool to hear your experience and how that actually like worked out for you for coaching as well. So as you get to BYU, you had you mentioned you made some of your greatest friends there. Yeah. You know, they got that ultimately helps you in the coaching world. Talk to me about like some of the games you played at BYU though. Like, and is there a favorite moment that you had as a player that sticks out to you? That's a memory that you'll tell your kids and grandkids one day.
There's so many memories to pick from. One of the ones that stands out the most, my junior year, we had like a fairly normal sized team, and then the mission age change happened. So all of the girls aged 19 to 21 were now eligible to go on missions. And so we had probably 7 girls that had committed to being on the team decide that they wanted and needed to go on missions. And all of a sudden we went from a normal size squad down to, I think by the time we hit the end of our season, we had 15, which 12 were on a field. So we had 3 subs, which is like insane at the college level and the pace that the game is played, to have only 3 subs. And if, you know, you risk injury or anything like that, and all of a sudden you're in a world of hurt. But we gritted it out. Like, we worked so hard. You talked about conditioning earlier. Like, I do not remember being in better shape in my life ever than that season, because there was no other option. Like, you got tired and it was like, well, suck it up and run up and down the field again. We'll call a timeout if we need to. But that year we made the national tournament, and we did the best that we ever had in program history. We actually ended up, we were up in the semis, and we up by like 6, I want to say. And then we ended up losing by 1 or 2, which was like so heartbreaking. But we came back and we won the consolation game, and being able to end that season with so many of my best friends on a win was like just this all-time high. And to like be able to just experience that and that success at that moment after we had like worked so hard. And even though it wasn't like exactly what we had dreamed of or winning nationals or any of those things, it still was like this ultimate high moment that I think we all look back on that week in Colorado together as like these awesome memories.
So cool. Not many people get to say they ended their season on a win. Yeah. I think people forget that. I try to remind people, like, even if you're not a state champion, there's like, even in like, let's just take tournament style stuff. There's usually a state champion and there's a third place winner.
Right.
And then there's sometimes a consolation. Some tournaments, some brackets of some sports have consolation, third place, and a state champ or something, right? Or whatever it is in college as well, same thing. So if you get an opportunity, like people always knock on the third place winner, like if they win a third place game, or the consolation winner if they win a consolation game. I'm like, dude, there's very few teams that actually get to say they ended their season on a win. That's very rare. And so I always like speak to that. I think it's super cool if you can if you can end it with a win. Ending with a win, and there's something to it. It's pretty special because it doesn't happen for many teams. And you mentioned like players. Who's an influential teammate that you were with at BYU, and what's one of the biggest life lessons that they taught you that you've been able to take with you, whether it be as a player or a coach?
I should probably shout out Kristen, who I coached with the last 4 years. She was ended up playing with me, so that my junior year was her last year. And she was willing to put in the work no matter what. Whether we needed, I don't think she'll mind me sharing. So she started as a freshman and she was benched and like she's actually from Eagle. So local girl, but she went down to BYU, played basketball, loved basketball, and had some friends that were like, yeah, I'm going to play lacrosse. And she was like, I played lacrosse in high school. I can do that. And so she didn't play her freshman year, and then she ended up being an All-American and this huge asset. I remember one game we played in Atlanta in a tournament. There was this goalie that we could not score on. Like we tried everything we could, and she used her basketball IQ and posted up in the middle of the 8 and just took feed after feed and was able to put it around the goalie. And we ended up winning a game that I thought we were doomed to lose. And then that season that we ended up with so few players, she put together the conditioning program for all of us and just was willing. Nobody else had the knowledge at that point to do that. And she said, well, this is what my team needs. This is what I'm going to do. And so being willing to like sacrifice or to learn things and to stick it out and do what your team needs for you, I think is something that I really admired in her, and then also saw in her as a coach, and am grateful to have learned that from her.
Yo, shout out to Kristen. And what's her last name? So we can shout out the local talent. What is it?
Her maiden name was Buig. So Kristen Buig. Okay.
So for the local peeps here in Idaho, shout out to the local legend. All right. That's awesome. Shout out Kristen. No, that's cool. And what would you say? Like, I know you mentioned the tournament, Jordan, like the nationals and stuff, and being there. But what's a cool venue that you played at that you remember? Like, I always like to ask athletes about like the venues that they got to travel to and play in. Is there a special field that you played at that you like just remember from the field and the facilities or whatever?
Yeah. So every year we would play in Santa Barbara, which was really awesome because they have these huge, beautiful polo fields. And coming from Provo, which was freezing year round, to go in February and experience the sun was like awesome every year. The other one that stands out the strongest, probably, we only went to once my freshman year, and it was Lindenwood University. And they just had this beautiful field with like big brick up on the side, which hit my East Coast heart, that like old school look. And then it just was like this beautiful field. I forgot about it until you asked that, but that was really great. And then just this last season coaching, actually, the regionals were held at the University of Denver, which they have a D1 team and a club team. And we like walked onto the field and every single girl pulled out their phone and they were like taking pictures to send to everybody. They were like, look at this. This is amazing. So those are probably the ones that stand out in my biggest memories.
See, that's what I love about sports, though. Like, takes you to places like that. Like, no one even talks about that. But there's certain courts that I played in, fields that I've been on. Like, I love that stuff. Like, you get to go to different. You travel. It gives you opportunities to be around like different locations, different people, different facilities, and I think that's cool. Everything's unique in its own way. I have a question. So this is maybe it's personal, but a lot of people at BYU, and not everybody who listens to the podcast is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or is involved with BYU. So I want to kind of educate them. They might ask this question. A lot of people get married early when over there. Like, I shouldn't say early, just relatively speaking. Like, people are married. It's very common to see athletes that are married. Yeah. And so I was just curious, were you married at the time that you were playing or in a relationship at the time you were playing? Because that's a question that I asked one of the basketball players I just interviewed. Yeah. And he was married at the time he was playing. So that was actually a conversation we had.
So my husband and I got married the start of my senior year.
Okay.
So yeah, we dated. He watched me play my junior year. He came to like that big national tournament where we finished third. And then actually the drive home from that is when we decided that we wanted to get married. So that tournament's like big for lots of reasons, but
You won him over on that one. That was it. He's like, yeah, I got this. That's dope. Okay. So to follow up on that, if you don't mind, I would like just having a relationship and taking that next step in life. How did you manage playing with being married? Like, I mean, it's a question that some people think it's crazy. I don't. I'm around it a lot, so it's just like, this is part of it. But some people are like, dude, you're married. Some of them even have kids. You're married and have kids, like playing. Like, so I mean, was it hard for you to manage that, or did it seem like it was business as usual?
It was a little bit of an adjustment for both of us, honestly, because I had been used to like managing my own schedule. I would go and I would lift when it fit into my schedule, and I would go and I would do conditioning. And then for me, a big part of like one of my favorite parts of being a part of a team is staying and building these relationships with all these girls. And so I remember the first couple weeks after we were married, I'd like stick around at practice for 20 minutes after, and I'd come home and he was like, where are you? Like, I thought practice ended 40 minutes ago. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. Like I got stuck talking. So there was like an adjustment in our expectations. And then I had lost like my lifting friends my teammates had graduated. And so he and I started to lift together a little bit, and that, came with its own adjustment too. Honestly, I think it helped. For the most part, I think it helped settle me down. It gave me somebody to bounce my thoughts off of that was not removed enough that like he didn't take anything I said about the team personally, or, things that I was like, I had a rough practice, and he was like, yeah, I don't care. Like that doesn't matter to me. But I also knew would support me and encourage me in any of my games. So having somebody that I knew I could look to in the stands, but also could be like mellow and chill for me when I was like worked up about something was good.
No, that's so cool. Like there was always a joke that was circulating at one point of like, why BYU, they would make jokes about BYU players, like football players were like in their early 20s and they have a wife and kids or whatever. And people would be like, oh yeah, like, and it was like a meme or something that was like, the guy was like, you think I'm scared of you? The guy across the field, like, literally, dude, my wife just got back from a bad day at work and something like that. And he's like, you think I'm scared of you? Like, come on. And so like, they said it's an advantage, like, hey, dude, like, I'm working through a marriage right now. There's nothing here that intimidates me. You know what I mean? So I think it's kind of,
I want to be. It's easier to be here.
Yeah, this is nothing, dude. This is a cakewalk. No, that's cool. That's really cool. So Jordan, did you know after like when the season was up, when you were done at BYU, did you know that you guys were going to be coaching? Did you know you were going to coach, or was there a transition phase between the last time you played and then you're coaching? Because it seems like it was pretty quickly after from the time frame. I just don't know the story there.
Yeah. No, I actually graduated. We lost in our regional semis. So my senior season was just a bummer in a lot of ways, but we lost in the regional semis, which meant that our season was over. We didn't make it to the national tournament. We didn't get to go on all these things that I had been hoping for. And my husband had graduated the last December. And so we moved that June to Texas for him to start dental school. And then where we lived in San Antonio, there like wasn't lacrosse around. And so I took like almost a 4-year hiatus of like no lacrosse. That's when I started having my kids. And in some ways it was really good because my senior year had been hard for me emotionally and mentally in different ways. It really made me analyze the game and like, do I love it for just lacrosse itself? Or like, was it the specific people I played with or coached with? And it turns out I love it. It's part of who I am. So the 4th year we were in Texas, my sister was playing for BYU and their national tournament was in Round Rock, just outside of Austin. And so we drove up to see her, of course, and I stepped onto the field to watch her. And as we left later, my husband was like, it is like a piece of you that has been missing is back, like just you watching her. And I had felt so excited to go and watch and to see people play, but I hadn't realized that I had been missing that. And so we knew at that point he had committed to do a residency at the University of Utah. And as soon as I knew we were going to Utah, I called up my friend that was coaching and I was like, do you need an assistant? Like I need to be back involved with the sport.
That's actually really cool in the transition there. Like, I mean, things happen for a reason, and I'm sure there's a reason you had like a couple of years you were in the spot that you were. There's a reason that it all happens, but like transitioning out of sport to like just regular life can be hard for some people, like, and especially if it doesn't end. Like the last season ended on a win, right? This one didn't, right, for your senior year. So there's there's things that happen there. It doesn't go to expectations. Like you don't meet them. And so it's kind of cool hearing that, actually. It's really cool to hear that it ended up working itself out the way that it was supposed to.
Yeah.
My question is this, and then what brought you guys to Idaho? Was it for work or was it for the job? Sorry, work with your husband, or was it for your coaching?
Yeah, so we I living in Texas had missed having 4 seasons. Like
Okay.
the heat, all the weather, not having lacrosse close by. I just had said I don't know that this is where I want to settle. And my husband, I still don't fully understand why, had said I don't want to live on the East Coast. And I said, well, that eliminates quite a bit. He jokes that Texas is the same size as the East Coast. And so we've eliminated the same size of space. But we looked at things that we valued and things that we wanted to raise a family around. And this family field, the family values, the slow pace, the outdoor experiences that we can experience in Idaho made it really appealing. And so we just looked for jobs up here, and everybody we had met while I was in undergrad and then through like our friends in dental school that had been from Idaho, we were like, those are really cool people. Like, let's go figure out some more about that. And then he found an office to work at here, and it's been great ever since.
That's cool. I mean, I like to think we're all pretty cool over here, but the thing is, yeah, I hate Idaho, and I've been here my whole life. Like, I've never left. And so, like, I don't know. My wife's from Washington, and she also talks about this, like this, it's similar in the weather type of deal, but it's better here.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, I would love the heat all year round. Like, just give me the heat. I don't know. I would rather not have snow ever again. But it's cool to hear people's perspectives, because you were, Virginia to BYU to Texas. Like, I mean, you've seen the weather, so you have a different perspective on it, and you know what's good. That's cool that you guys are up here now. I do want to ask you about like the ups and downs of sports and how it takes a toll on you mentally and how you can overcome those things, and any advice you might give. So, like, having heard that you've gone through these different transitions, going from a high level high school and then having like the recruiting trail kind of not go the way that you initially planned, then going to BYU. It's awesome. You have a good career there, but it didn't end the way that you wanted it to on the field. But then you go into the world of, going down for dental school in Texas, and you're there for a couple of years before you get into the coaching side of things. And there's transitions everywhere, but it's probably mentally taxing. And I would just like to know if you could give some advice to people on the mental side of that, and like the toll it takes, and how you were able to like navigate that so it didn't necessarily derail your actual life.
Right. I mean, to be totally honest, there were days that it did. Like, you have a rough practice, you have a rough game, or, even back to track, like a rough meet where I did not hit the times that I wanted, or got beat by somebody I swore I wouldn't lose to. And I had to give myself time to experience those emotions, because shutting them down doesn't make them go away. It just makes those experiences, in my experience, it like re-brings those up when you're in a similar situation again. I think part of it was realizing and understanding that, like, to have the high highs that come with sports, those big wins, the comebacks, the wins in overtime, all of that means that you have to risk losing. And coming to terms with that, and then also having a sense of myself outside of sports while being an athlete, being involved in lacrosse, while all of that is so important to me, the wins or the losses don't change that, and they don't change who I am. And so really getting grounded and rooted in my own identity and what values I bring to a team, what are my strengths, what are my assets, that those really define me much more than whether or not I got this award or whether I won this specific game. Really lets me ride those highs and lows a little bit more. I do joke all the time, like, we watched, the Stanley Cup, or we watched the women's lacrosse national championships and all of those things, and my attention is drawn to the team that's just lost. And I always, like, as happy as I want to be for the team that wins, I'm always like, oh, like, that's such a heartbreaker for those teams. And I don't know if that's just that I'm extra sympathetic or that I've been through it enough that I can be so empathetic. But, I still experience those lows, but that's part of what you risk to get the highs.
I love how you worded that. They have the ups and downs. It's not a flat line. And in the medical industry, you don't like flat lines, right? Like, so you have to understand that there's going to be a heartbeat that's up and down, and that's the risk that you get with it all. But I love that you mentioned being grounded in who you are and how that can actually play a role. I think that's huge. Like, that helps you a lot. Like, just knowing who you are and what values you bring to the team, like so that you can better navigate those downs when they happen. Man, I also gravitate towards the teams that lose. So that's kind of funny you said that, Jordan. I always tend to watch their reactions and I feel for them.
Yeah.
But I also like get motivated by them sometimes when I see the way that certain ones react and whatnot when they lose big games and big situations. So what would you say is the biggest life lesson that lacrosse has taught you so far? I mean, you're still coaching, so it's still going on. But having been born into the quote unquote cult lacrosse family, but like what's the biggest life lesson that's taught you so far?
Man, there's so many things that I could pull from, but I think what comes to mind and what like feels the strongest and maybe is the biggest thing is that like you get out of it what you put in. And I think that's true for anything in life, whether you're willing to put in extra reps, whether you're willing to put in extra sprints, or sometimes not even extra. Sometimes you don't have that time. Sometimes you're, maxed out on what you can give, but putting in the effort in the moment to make the most of what you are putting into it is going to get you the biggest return. And I think that applies to relationships too. When I show up for my teammates in either down moments that they're having, or if they have, some other sport that they're competing in and I can go watch and support them, or they have a big life event and showing up. And sometimes people have been like surprised to see me at those kinds of events. I hope it stops being surprising. I hope it's something that people can count on me for. But doing that, I think, has enabled me to like maintain relationships with people that I really care about. And I think it's something that has given me pride in how I show up, no matter what the outcome is. And, if I am proud of how I played, regardless of what the scoreboard says, then I can be happy and content with myself moving forward.
I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. That's so cool. And Jordan, where can we find out more about the schedule for the women's lacrosse program at Boise State? So I can put it here in the description. Like when are you guys going to be playing? You said it's spring sport. Like just for the people who aren't fully aware, where can they find this information at?
The most reliable place to find information about us is on our team Instagram, which is Boise State W Lacrosse. We'll post there. We're hoping to do some clinics, some things like that to get young players out. And then this spring, for the first time ever, because we won the regional tournament last year, we get to host regionals this year. So mid-April, we should be hosting a highly competitive tournament, and games are free at Lincoln Field. So if anybody wants to come, we would love to have you there.
Okay. That was actually going to be my next question. Like, where are you playing at and how do you get tickets? So that just answered all of that. So I'm going to put the link here for the Instagram page of the women's lacrosse program here in the description. Sorry, I have a cold, so I have like side pressure. But I'm going to put that in the description here. I'd encourage anybody who's listening, please, like if you live in the Treasure Valley, just anywhere around here, and you're interested in going to check this out and seeing what Jordan's putting together with this team, and seeing all the girls competing at a high level, like check it out. Go show some support over there. And the more support you get at Boise State for like the non-football and, the non-revenue generating sports, which is basically just football, literally over there. It's so much better for the whole entire program and the entire community. So please show your support. I'll definitely be going out. So you'll see me there. So put that in the description. I hope everybody who's listening enjoyed this one. If you did, if you're listening to this on your audio side, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to leave us a review. 5 stars is always appreciated. Helps to get out to more and more people. That's the reason this show has been downloaded in 182 countries in all 50 states. It's because of you guys. Now, if you're watching it on YouTube, which I have a pretty small following, only like 470 subscribers at the time of this interview, I appreciate every one of you. I'm not trying to say you guys are small, but I mean, please hit the follow button. If that's where you're watching it for the first time, just hit the follow button, because we'll be coming to you guys every Friday with new interviews. So I appreciate you guys' time. Jordan, just want to say thank you for joining us. And we'll be coming to you guys next week with another interview. Take care.
Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.